Hello, I'm Gina, and my part in this group video essay is to introduce the issue, analyze the ethical issues, and to give an analysis on Rawls' theory of justice. China attempts to use artificial technology, specifically facial recognition technology, against the Uyghur people who are a minority in China. This technology is directed at racial and religious minorities such as the Uyghur people. The Uyghurs are a Turkish-speaking group that reside in Xinjiang, China, that has been subject to oppression from the Chinese state. They are different from the majority of China, who are the Han Chinese population. They are different ethnically, linguistically, culturally, and religiously. Ethnic tensions and cultural differences are only one reason why they are discriminated against. The government of China thinks that the Uyghur minority is a threat to the country, as they desire more autonomy, freedom, and independence, and they think that these surveillance measures are a way to install stability and control over Canada. The surveillance is present in almost all over China, and the use of surveillance by China has raised serious questions on human rights and has intensified the impacts of inequality and oppression. Surveillance cameras, intelligence analysis, collection of DNA, which is a very extreme form of suppression, are some methods in which this has occurred. There are many stakeholders involved in this case study: the Uyghur people, Chinese government, international community, human rights organizations, other religious minorities and ethnic communities, companies involved in the surveillance technology measures, and researchers. There are also many risks: ethnic and religious tensions, geopolitical implications, radicalization, the eroding of trust, and greater societal divisions. Analysis of ethical issues. So responsibilities of AI surveillance company. So they have the responsibility of providing safe technology. They have the responsibility of providing fail-safes to prevent the misuse of technology. Some feature that does not allow technology to be used negatively. Make sure that technology adheres to ethical framework, AMC Code of Ethics. Make sure data and technology cannot be hacked. They have the responsibility of knowing what that technology is being used for, especially technology such as facial recognition technology that has the possibility of being used for evil and foul play. Rights of stakeholders. So there are many rights of stakeholders, especially since there are many stakeholders involved in this case study. But today I'll most specifically focus on the rights of the Uyghur minority group and the Chinese government due to a lack of time. So the rights of the Uyghur minority group is they have the right to freedom, equality, freedom from discrimination, they have the right to their own beliefs, and they have the right to practice their own religion. The Chinese government has the right to promote stability and safety within the country. They have the right to protect their nation from national security, and they have the right to formulate policies. So here are some other rights of other stakeholders involved in the situation, such as the ethnic communities, the companies, and the human rights organizations. Impacts on the stakeholders. So I'll talk about the impacts on only the Chinese government and the Uyghur minority group for this case study today. So consequences for the Uyghur minority group is that they face human rights abuse, marginalization, discrimination, psychological and emotional trauma, separation of family, and cultural erosion. They are at risk for lifelong trauma and psychological damage. They may face the risk of losing their cultural identity due to forced assimilation. They are also at risk of being stigmatized by others in society. So economic cost is one cost experienced by the Uyghur people. The Chinese government, the consequences for them is that they do face outlash and criticism from foreign countries regarding their treatment of the Uyghur population, which has resulted in strain in diplomatic relations and economic consequences. The further straining of geopolitical relations with China and other countries are at risk, which could lead to potential conflicts, and China is at risk of losing their global reputation due to practicing of human rights violations. Some harms is the distortion of their global image and reputation, and China has reduced economic costs due to international criticisms and trade restrictions being placed on China. Potential actions, so increase international pressure, providing support to the Uyghur group, and legal action of potential actions that could be taken. Our chosen course of action is legal action. Ethical merits, courtesy to others, practicality, and self-interest are the ways in which we shall analyze our chosen course of action. So by taking legal action, it will hold both the company and the Chinese government accountable and responsible for their actions. Taking legal actions would be respectful to other stakeholders involved in this situation. Practicality, this course of action may not be the most practical due to the reluctancy of international forces, as they may want to maintain their diplomatic relations with China, and China may not be very receptive to external forces involved in this matter. And self-interest, human rights organizations will be driven by self-interest, as advocating for human rights is what they do. And the foreign government and international community will be less inclined due to wanting to maintain good relations with China diplomatically.
Hello, my name is Angela, and today I'll be going over what is utilitarianism, utility associated with the case, and in more depth the analysis of the case according to rule utilitarian ethics. So what is utilitarianism? While utilitarianism is a philosophical view or theory about how we should evaluate a wide range of things. Such things are actions, laws, policies, character traits, and moral codes. Utilitarianism is a theory based on consequentialism, which aims to evaluate actions based on their outcomes. And we as people are a part of a society and not to choose actions that will maximize utility or reduce suffering. And we have three things to think about. What things are good and bad, who's good, and whether actions policies are made right or wrong by their actual consequences. In this case, we'll be evaluating the use of AI surveillance systems in China to monitor Uyghur people if it's ethical under the context of act and rule utilitarianism. From a general perspective, the use of AI surveillance systems has the ability to provide increased safety measures as they allow for close and more accurate monitoring of delinquent or criminal behavior through the assessment of physical and facial features. For increasing utility, they have the ability to adapt to new environments and continue to learn to grow. Their facial recognition allows for safer surveillance by creating profiles of these offenders, and as AI systems grow, they become more accessible. For pain reduction, obviously there's less crime, and also there's reduction in volatility associated with human policing. For future directions, the implementation of AI systems in homes, public settings, and businesses will be allowed, and the use of the military or the AI in the military. As decreasing utility, we have the breach of privacy, which may infringe on people's rights and individuals' privacy. If fallen into the wrong hands, it may lead to abuse of power, such as marginalization, like in the case of the Uyghur people. It can be hacked and lead to private information leakages. It may be used to stalk people that have not committed crimes. The data collected may be sold to third parties, and based on how the AI model is trained, it may follow Western standards and be discriminatory towards people and minorities, such as, the Uyghur people in this situation. In more detail, rule utilitarians believe that a society can maximize utility by setting up and adhering to a moral code that contains specified laws. The moral code will only contain the correct moral rules that have shown to maximize utility and well-being than other possible options. Once these rules are determined, then an individual's actions may be judged to assess if they conform to the correct rules. The morality of using AI surveillance systems depends on the context of their use, obviously. In this case, the Uyghur people in China, the training of the model was said to be on the Uyghur people, therefore breaching their privacy by collecting personal information in order to target this marginalized group to support the agenda of the government. A utilitarian would likely consider the use of AI surveillance systems as ethically prohibited as it poses a greater risk rather than utility. It risks a breach of privacies and endorsing marginalization, targeting, endorsement of targeted agendas based on the training of these models, and states fear of sensitive information of breaching, and much more. Thus, the consistency of the real utilitarian analysis would reveal that although the use of AI models may lead to some utility, it's possible in reality due to not living in a perfect world to violate several moral rules, such as various points of privacy, which would jeopardize public safety and lead to issues such as targeted models and discrimination, as highlighted in the case of the Uyghur people.
Hi, my name is Yatharth Mathur, and I am part of Group 12 essay for Philosophy 331, and today I will be explaining the act utilitarianism concept. Hello, and welcome back to my presentation on act utilitarianism. So, to begin with, what is act utilitarianism? Act utilitarianism is a moral theory that focuses on the consequences of each action and calculates the overall happiness or utility that an effort brings each time it's performed. So, in other words, if we focus on the consequences, we would consider it correct if it brings the most happiness to everyone involved in any given situation. This theory was proposed by Jeremy Bentham, who was a renowned philosopher. To begin and move forward with this, I would first like to explain the difference between act and rule utilitarianism. Now, you may be wondering how act utilitarianism differs from rule utilitarianism. The main difference is that an act utilitarian looks at situations individually, while a rule utilitarian would follow general rules that should be applied in all situations. This allows for flexibility in following rules and can also use general guidelines while still considering the individual circumstances when necessary. And moving on to the second point, flexibility in rules. Like an act utilitarian will not mind bending the rules, whereas a rule utilitarian might. And a good example to explain the difference between what an act utilitarian versus a rule utilitarian would look is a comic which is in front of you, and there was also a case study which was presented by the Libre text, where they explained how an act utilitarian versus a rule utilitarian would react in, let's say, a situation where a mother is giving birth, and an act utilitarian will make sure that they reach the hospital even if it requires you to bend the rules, but a rule utilitarian will try to figure out more ways to do it while following the rule. To and ensure that maximum happiness is achieved. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the case study of how the AI emotion detection software tested on the Uyghur Muslims and how ACT utilitarianism acts in this, takes a place in this. So, how would an ACT utilitarian approach to this situation? They would consider the potential benefits and harms of using emotion recognition technology in the police stations in Zhejiang province and weigh them against each other. They would also consider the impact on all parties involved, including the Uyghur citizens, Chinese officials, and international human rights organizations. An ACT utilitarian would determine whether using emotion recognition technology in the specific case would result in greatest overall happiness for all parties involved. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Divijot Kaur and I'm a third year computer science student, and today I'll be presenting the case of AI surveillance systems in China with respect to Kantian deontology. First, I will start with what is Kantian deontology. Kant proposed deontology, a theory that is based on duties to understand what is right or wrong. As per Kant, an action is just not morally correct because the outcome of the action is good. According to him, motive behind the action is important. Kant based his theory on rationality. Kant says, act only according to the maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Kant based the definition on moral duties as per categorical imperative. As per Kant, our moral duties cannot be based on some conditions. Morality is unconditional. There is no if or then in our moral duties. These should be absolute duties that we need to perform. For example, do not steal, do not kill anyone. Kant presented three formulations of categorical imperative. These are as follows on the screen. In our case, we will analyze the actions as per each of the categorical imperative framework given by Kant. In our case, the major stakeholders who perform the action of AI surveillance are the Chinese officials. Also involved are the technology agencies who are responsible for creating such technologies. Maxim. The purpose of the system was prejudgment without any evidence. This judged emotional states to discriminate against Uyghur population. It reduces people as objects and uses people as means to control. It violates the Kant framework, rule of treating people as an end in themselves and not just means only. Here, by using surveillance, they are just being treated as means to prejudice without even any evidence. Universal law. The action of AI surveillance in this case is only applicable a particular set of population, Uyghur. There is discrimination in this action and it violates the categorical imperative framework. AI surveillance only targeted at Uyghur population in a particular state. It violates the Kant's framework that states that action should become the universal law. There cannot be a law which states that all humans should be subjected to AI surveillance. If it is universally accepted, it would lead to human rights or freedom violation. Next, we have to categorize each potential action as ethically obligatory, prohibited, or acceptable as per Kant. The action is imposing surveillance on the Uyghur population. Kantian ethics would generally categorize this action as prohibited. It violates the principles of universalizability and respect for humanity as an end. Imposing surveillance specifically on a particular ethnic and religious minority, targeting them based on their identity, undermines their autonomy and treats them merely as a means to an end. It also contradicts the principles of fairness and justice. The action here is collecting DNA and biometric data. Kantian ethics would likely categorize this action as prohibited. Collecting DNA and biometric data without informed consent, particularly when it is directed at a specific group, violates the principles of autonomy and the respect for humanity as an end. It treats individuals as objects to be monitored and controlled, undermining their dignity and autonomy. The next action performed was forced re-education camps and assimilation efforts. Kantian ethics would likely categorize these actions as prohibited. Forcing individuals into re-education camps with the intention of assimilating them into a different culture violates the principles of respect for autonomy and treating individuals as an end in themselves. It denies individuals the freedom to make their own choices and coerces them into conforming to a particular ideology.
Hello, this is Dhara Bhatia. I am a fourth year student currently majoring in computer science, and in this case study today, I would be doing an analysis of AI surveillance systems which are used in China to monitor the population of the Uyghur minority using virtue ethics.
Hello, this is Bhatia. Today we will talk about the analysis of AI surveillance systems used on monitor Uyghurs using virtue ethics. Before starting, let's first start on what is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is a character-based approach to morality which defines code action basis on various traits such as courage, wisdom, justice, loyalty, and so on. According to Greek philosopher Aristotle, it is a crucial element for the well-being and flourishing of humans, as it will help them distinguish between what's right and what's wrong. Based on this above framework, we can analyze the above case using the following key factors. First, virtues. Virtues are considered good actions such as justice, quality, fairness, compassion, etc. Here, the Chinese government uses AI systems for monitoring and targeting Uyghurs. It also uses facial recognition systems, which are used for detaining Uyghur people before they commit a crime, based on their facial structure and so on. This has led to undermining of several virtues such as trust, integrity, and the right to self-determination, which creates an atmosphere of fear and distrust. This has also led to the undermining of the freedoms and the justice delivered to them. Second, human coercion. These are based on emphasis on the intentions which are used on actions. Usually, these AI systems could be helpful in the prevention of criminal or terrorist attacks, or even help identifying criminals. However, this has also led to these systems have also led to the unlawful detentions of various Uyghurs and has led to several discriminations against them. It also has undermined a lot of their freedom and their ability to move freely. Third, respect for autonomy. There is a great importance of respecting each and every one person's autonomy and treating them respectfully. These AI monitoring systems in China have also faced various ethical issues. The use of these AI systems to monitor checkpoints to determine mental of the groups, use of facial detection methods to determine whether someone is about to commit crime before they have and before any prior evidence leads to unlawful detentions and has led to the curtailment of their rights. From the other analysis, we can see from the perspective of a virtue ethic that the above actions would be considered morally incorrect and unjust to the people of Uyghur people. Therefore, correct actions must be taken in order to ensure the fairness and justice for all of them.
Rawls' theory of justice. So the two principles of justice is the first principle and the second principle, which constitutes of the fair equality of opportunity principle, and the difference principle, which composes of income and wealth. So evaluation of the case study. So the first principle states that all people should be able to have as much freedom as everyone else is having. The Uyghur minority group definitely do not have access to freedom since their movements are controlled. They're facing discrimination and persecution. Surveillance technologies such as facial technology have been implemented all over Xinjiang just to target this minority group, which is impeding on their freedom, privacy, and overall livelihood. Their freedom is prohibited not just physically, but also in freedom of expression. All of this goes against Rawls' first principle of justice. Second principle, opportunities. The Uyghur population do not have equal access to opportunity as they are discriminated against. Restrictions are placed from practicing their religion. They have limited access to education as well as employment opportunities, and many are forced into concentration camps to learn to assimilate to the preferred culture and are made to engage in forced labor. All of this defies what equal opportunity even is, as the Uyghur population are not given the same opportunities as the rest of the population of China, and the group is treated very harshly. Second principle, income and wealth. Many Uyghur people are forced to engage in forced labor for a very low wage or no money at all. The pay that they receive in the year should have been the amount that they received in the month. This inequality is clearly not benefiting the Uyghur population in the slightest and is only amplifying the severity and complexity of the troubles they are facing. This act further oppresses the Uyghur population. This inequality does not benefit the least disadvantaged people in society, which is the minority group in this case.
Hello, I'm Divijot Kaur, and now I'll present the conclusion of the case. Context of ethical theories in the case. A rule utilitarian. A rule utilitarian would likely consider the use of AI surveillance systems as ethically prohibited as it poses greater risk rather than utility. Kantian deontology. The case violates the Kant's framework that states that action should be the universal law. There cannot be a law which states that all humans should be subjected to AI surveillance. If it is universally accepted, it would lead to human rights or freedom violation. Act utilitarian would consider the potential benefits and harms of using emotion recognition technology in police stations in Xinjiang province. Would weigh the potential benefits against the potential harms. Rawls' theory of justice. This case study goes against the first principle of Rawls' theory. This case study also goes against Rawls' theory in terms of opportunities and income and wealth for the second principle. Virtue ethics. The actions would be considered morally incorrect and therefore specific actions must be taken to ensure fairness and justice for the Uyghur people. Action pointers. Based on the ethical analysis, the actions described in the case, surveillance, forced detention, and assimilation efforts are ethically prohibited. Actions to be taken to address the ethical issues are need for international advocacy and pressure on the Chinese government to ensure the protection of the Uyghur population's rights. Governments, international organizations, and companies should reassess their involvement with and complicity in the situation and take appropriate actions. Human rights organizations to protect human rights and advocate for justice. They should also promote cross-cultural understanding and empathy through education and awareness campaigns. Strong rules and laws. Enforce stronger rules and laws and regulations to prevent the misuse of AI and surveillance technologies. We can work towards addressing the ethical concerns and promoting a more just and equitable treatment of the Uyghur population.